How's it going, everyone? It's Riley's Redzone, and welcome back to another weekly edition of NFL Picks. The season is already blowing by. We're in week 6 as we continue this weekly series. Let's quick recap last week before diving into this week's games. I was 8-6, so above 500. Our guest picker, Nick, was 7-7. So just kind of an average week for both of us. That takes my season record to 43-35. So we're climbing. Hopefully by the end of the season, we'll be towards the top. And for this week, to bring back a guest picker, it ended up being pretty clear who we needed to bring on. We're going to bring on Max, who is undefeated in the fantasy league that we'll talk about at the end. Amazingly, he's done so without Christian McCaffrey. Yes, you heard that right. His top pick was Christian McCaffrey, and he is still undefeated, which is usually the other way around. But he's going to be the guy for this week, so we're looking forward to seeing his picks as well. And so with all that being said, we're about to hop into this week's selection of who I think wins every game. We don't do spread picks. I may mention spreads to get an idea of who's the favorite, but in the end, it's selecting who I think straight up wins the ball game. So let's get started with this Thursday night matchup in the NFC West. Two teams that as of late I'd say are on the decline with the 49ers and the Seahawks. 49ers can't pull off the win against the Cardinals last week, and the Seahawks have dropped now a couple in a row. That game against the Giants was wacky, to say the least, but they both catch losses here. There's a little bit of concern with both, but I still think I'm more confident in the Niners actually being a potential playoff contender than I am the Seahawks. I even when they were 3-0 didn't think they were exactly as good. I think they're a very good team. I don't think they're a top level. And so they're looking at the wild card spot for me later this season probably, but as a 3.5-point favorite on the road, give me the 49ers. That's where Max goes as well. The Jaguars and the Bears. This is also, I think, a tricky one because the Jaguars finally looked like what we maybe thought they could. They almost also choked the game against the Colts, but they end up being victorious there. Meanwhile, Caleb Williams puts up his best game as a Bear so far in his career. I mean, he looked incredible. So are these two teams that are really taking a step up here? The Bears getting that big win against a team like the Panthers was key to me, just to get a little momentum. You get some energy for Caleb Williams. Their defense stepped up, albeit against a not great team. Meanwhile, the Jaguars getting that win to me is significant. I like the Jaguars as road underdogs. So does Max, believe it or not. But I think that is an interesting game because of what are these two teams? Are they really what we saw last week, or are they closer to what we saw at the beginning of the season? We'll take the Jaguars, though. Bucks Saints. We're going to bring it up a lot in this video. I historically am a huge fan of when teams make changes that even that next week it's going to make an impact. I picked the Panthers when they put in Andy Dalton earlier this year. They won that. With interim head coaches, I'm very prone to do that historically. I think that just something new in there can spruce things up. But we've got about 4 new situations to talk about as we get throughout all these teams. I think going with Spencer Rattler is a nice call. We've seen him obviously in his college days look great at Oklahoma, look pretty good at South Carolina at times. I think his upside's higher than Jake Haener. I like the choice of going with it, but I'm not going to say it's enough to get a victory this week. I think Baker Mayfield and the Bucks, after just not quite being able to beat the Falcons, they get it done on the road. They're 3.5-point favorites. Max is going to follow in that direction. He goes with the Buccaneers as well. So we're both going Tampa Bay. Hope everyone in that area is doing well right now with what is tragically the storm occurring there. Hopefully all those in the Tampa Bay area have evacuated that are able to, as it seems like it's going to be hitting there directly. But for their football team, I think the Buccaneers for this week, that they were able to get out in time and play a football game, I think that they can get it done on Sunday. The Commanders and the Ravens. Officially, it's like the Commanders are legit. They are a good football team, but so are the Ravens. The Commanders have done all that you could want and more out of this season. I thought they were only going to find out, okay, Jaden Daniels is our guy moving forward. Not just that. He's the guy right now. They are in driver's seat potentially their division. They're in playoff contention. They look like last year's Texans. They have themselves a special one in Jaden Daniels. But to me, the Ravens are a top 2 team in football right now. I'm going to take Baltimore. 6.5 is a large spread. I will just say that's interesting, but me and Max are both going to go with the Ravens. I just think that Lamar and that team is so strong. No reason to hesitate, though, on the Commanders because of it. They have looked phenomenal this season. I just think that this week the Ravens get the best of them. Cardinals, Packers. These are some teams that, are pulling out some squeaky wins here. Packers barely get it done against the Rams, and the Cardinals just able to sneak past the Niners. I think the Cardinals are a very odd team. They're probably going to end up with 8 or 9 wins on the outside of the playoffs. To me, I don't think their defense is the level it needs to be, but Kyler has shown that he can make things interesting. Meanwhile, the Packers, getting Jordan Love back, I think they're a great team. I've got them on the borderline top 10 in the rankings right now. I'm going to take the Packers. They're 5-point favorites at home. Give me Green Bay in that one. Max does so as well, even though the Cardinals have started to pick it up offensively. Colts and Titans. This is my most difficult game to predict of the week in my personal opinion because the Colts have stated that Anthony Richardson is their guy at quarterback. That makes sense for the long term. Flacco has been playing very, very well, though. And for this week, it's still unknown what it's going to be because basically if Anthony Richardson is healthy, they're going with him. And if he's not, it's going to be Flacco. What's tricky there is I actually think at this very moment, the team is playing better with Joe Flacco. But the problem is we don't know what quarterback they're going with on Sunday. Meanwhile, the Titans have been terrible this season, but their most recent game was a victory against the Dolphins. So if anything, they're going to have a little bit of momentum there. I'm assuming that Will Levis is going to be the guy back in the lineup there. I'm going to take the Titans at home. I was shocked to see they're at this moment favored by 2.5. Max is going to go with the upset pick in the Colts, which could happen. I just looked at the series history as of late, and Tennessee's had a little bit of an edge recently, which is why I'm going to go with the Titans. But that, in my opinion, should be maybe the closest game of the week. I think it comes down to maybe a field goal. Texans, Patriots. Drake May's getting his debut against the Texans. Good luck. That's a tough defense, and as well with the struggling offensive line. That's difficult. I can respect them going to Drake May at this point. It's clear that they're not going to win football games with Jacoby. It just would be more of whether you savor potential just mistakes from Drake May if he gets into the lineup too early. I think a team should look at Jacoby Brissett if you're I know he's previously been with Miami, or if you're Las Vegas, that you just need, if you think you have a chance this year, or if a quarterback injury occurs in the next week or two, I'd be looking at Jacoby Brissett because I still think he's a competent quarterback, but I understand the Patriots at this time wanting to go with Drake May. I just think the Texans are a really good football team. I've got them in the top 5 now after the victory over the Bills last week. Give me C.J. Stroud and co. They're 7-point favorites. Nico Collins is a huge loss for sure. Also lost to my fantasy team we'll discuss later, but as 7-point favorites, they still have other weapons. I think that they're going to go and have a great day on Sunday. Give me the Texans as well. Max does the same. Browns, Eagles. I said it last week. I gave the Browns one last shot. I thought it was a winnable game going into it against the Commanders. They didn't get it done. And the Eagles have maybe not been as dominant as I thought they would be this season. I thought they'd be a pretty clear top 5 team. They haven't looked that way. They're clearly top 10 in my opinion right now. Coming off a little bit of rest here. We'll see how they do. But 9-point favorites are the Eagles. I'm going with Philadelphia. Max is going with the upset pick of Cleveland. He's pulling to me, and knowing what's going to happen is Cleveland's going to win this game after I've kind of just been hesitant to really step off of the market there. I will say this. And we can talk about this every week, but the Deshaun Watson situation is one of the oddest in the NFL history and really tough because they've given him chances, and I just don't think he's playing very well. I truly believe that this team would be a little bit more of a team that could fight in games with Jameis Winston right now, regardless of whether they get rid of Deshaun long term. In my opinion, that'd be the smart way to go because at worst you can put in Jameis and maybe you turn back to Deshaun down the line. But right now, what's also hard is looking at their cap hit. I don't know if they're going to be able to get rid of that contract, but there's just a lack of energy when he's in at that quarterback position right now. And could he get back the old Houston days? Maybe, but it's certainly not looking that way. If I was Cleveland, I'd be looking at Jameis, but they're not doing so. And for that reason, I'm going with Philadelphia. As mentioned, Max is going with the Browns. They could pull off an upset. Chargers, Broncos. I think this is a sneaky game as well because the Chargers have just been there. I think with Harbaugh, you're going to be fighting for every game, that you're going to be in contention here, but it hasn't been smooth sailing per se so far. But I think they've been a little lackluster compared to their potential, what I thought would be. But they're going to pull off some sneaky upsets this season, and the Broncos have done just that. I mean, last week, the Broncos just putting on a clinic against the Raiders was crazy. I thought it would be their defense, which has also stepped up, but also Bo Nix last week maybe started a little slow, but got in rhythm, and I love that press conference this week where Bo Nix kind of reposting it with the whole Bueller thing that, maybe has a little bit of rebelness to it, which is what I think you want to see with Bo Nix because he's just that down the middle whatever type of quarterback going in as a prospect. You knew he was pro ready, but does he have the upside? Well, if he does, that's a game changer. But give me the Chargers here, the 3-point favorites on the road, which I think is interesting. But I like Los Angeles in this division game. I believe this is a get-back game for Harbaugh's team. The Broncos have looked better than thought going into the season, but I'll take the Chargers in that one. Raiders, Steelers. This is another close one. We've got a couple of field goal within spreads, and this is one of them. The Steelers, I believe, are going to go with Fields to stick with, but Russell Wilson is going to start being healthy, and there's at least a watch that you can monitor now that they could potentially go a different direction at quarterback if they so happen to choose so, but at the moment, I think you go with Fields one more week and just see how this week plays. But if it's a struggle, you may turn to Russell. And for the Raiders, they have pulled the trigger on going with Aiden O'Connell over Gardner Minshew. I think that's a nice little spark for them. I've talked about that there's a lot of new elements. That's one I actually do think works out. Give me Las Vegas as a 3-point underdog on the road over the Steelers. Max is going to go with the Steelers at home. I think we see Justin Fields struggle a little bit, which is tough for his opportunity, but I believe the Raiders can put on a show this week and kind of bounce back. I'll take Las Vegas as one of my upset picks for the week. Panthers, Falcons, Panthers at home. It's safe to take the Falcons here. Are they legit? Is it an actual question after such a performance last week from Kirk Cousins? I think they're about where we thought they would be, that they could win this division pretty handedly. But I don't think they're a top Super Bowl contender. But this is a team that should easily make the playoffs and really make some noise when you have such now a stability at quarterback, which is what they haven't had in Carolina this season. Andy Dalton has maybe been a little bit safer. They throw in Bryce at the end of the game, and he actually had a couple good throws. But injuries also starting to pile up. This is one of those where it's just a safe choice to go with the Falcons, even if the Panthers are going to pull off some random upsets. It's just safer to go with Atlanta there. So I'll take them. So does Max. 6-point favorites. Lions, Cowboys. Lions, we didn't see last week, but they're a top 3 team, in my opinion, right now. I think that they are in great position. The Cowboys, I did move up slightly in my rankings, but overall, I'm not wowed from what I've seen. They just pulled off the victory against the Steelers. I'm not wowed by it. I think that they're a decent team, though. I think a lot of people underrate them. This is going to be a wild card team for Dallas this season. That's what I'm looking at, really. But the Lions, to me, are just a wagon. I believe the Lions are a good football team. They're 3-point favorites. I'll take them on the road here. Max is going to go with the home team Cowboys as an underdog. So watch out for that one. But I like the Lions. Bengals, Giants. The Bengals have maybe had the biggest move I've had for a team in a loss. The offense is back. Joe Burrow is playing at an elite level. When they have their receivers healthy, they got it all there. They just apparently can't stop a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from scoring touchdowns because The offense has done everything they can. Obviously, the missed kick at the end is tough too, but the hold wasn't there, so that's not on McPherson. But I like the Bengals here. The Giants have shown at times they can move the football and win games. They're going to be a sneaky team. This is one, if the Bengals lose, you're probably looking at a change either at the head coach or defensive coordinator position. You just can't start that slow. But the offense has been clicking. I think this is when they really actually get in the win column after a good performance. I'll take the Bengals 3.5-point favorites. So does Max. And that brings us to the last game of the week, which does have a little bit of news with it as well, being the Bills and the Jets. Jets, of course, being the first team to fire their head coach this season, being Robert Saleh. This is a move that probably needed to happen. The timing, I am shocked it was that week compared to maybe give another week or two leash. I also think it's ironic that it sounded like Saleh was going to take away play calling duties for Hackett and move it over to Downing, in which they end up making that decision later, but he got canned as well. As I've mentioned, interim head coaches are very prone to get their teams wins. And because of that, I'm on the spot actually going to change my pick to the Jets. I had the Buffalo Bills for these last few days on it, but you know what? I'm looking at it. I need to take some swings for the fences. I only have a few upset picks on here. Give me another one. I'll take the Jets. Max is going to take the Bills at home. Apologies, on the road as the favorite, 2-point favorite. Why not the Jets? I think that this could get interesting. I'm going to change my pick here. Let's go with the Jets as a little spark with their interim head coach, DC, here. I think that'll be a little bit of an energy shift. So I'm going with the Jets. I know this is a cut. This is Future Riley's Red Zone here. Luckily, we was on the last game, but the audio cut out for the last half of the video, so I'm doing this piece here. But we were on the last game, so let's talk about the fantasy league after it's clear. I'm going with the Jets. Max is going with the Bills. Let's start by talking about some awards that are given in this fantasy league. They've sparked a lot of controversy as of late, and it's because I don't assign these awards. These are given by Sleeper to these teams. Specifically, there's an award called the Best Manager, which has sparked some controversy in the group chat of the guest pickers for this league. And what the Best Manager textbook definition is basically the team that leaves the least amount of points on the bench. So you're scoring, that's good management. You're choosing who to start and sit. But last week we had a guy score about 65 points, and he won Best Manager because he left nobody on the bench because his team was terrible that week. And, people were like, he shouldn't be winning that. Well, at least this week, it's a worthy candidate. We have Carson winning it, who scored 142 points in a win against myself out of a possible 142.26. Great managing there. Meanwhile, on the other end of the poll here, Cody was the worst manager of the week. This guy scored 89 points out of a possible 131. We'll talk about later. He lost to a dude who started Tua Tagovailoa and Amon St. Brown, an injured reserve quarterback and a wide receiver on bye. This dude still caught an L. That is just poor management. Biggest blowout went to our guest picker, Max, who won 174 to 110. He's just putting up the points. He's undefeated, and he doesn't even have Christian McCaffrey yet. He picked Christian McCaffrey, and most of the time when you pick Christian McCaffrey and he's hurt, you're losing. But this guy is undefeated, and he's looking to continue it this week. Shout out Braden for a narrow victory over Matthew. Charlie scoring 174 points. That was the most point, 174.56, barely beating Max in that category, and then Alex was the lowest scorer. Quick Riley's Red Zone team update. We're not doing so hot. We started 3-0. We've dropped 2 games in a row. We've had 2 players that are key get injured. I mean, last week I lost Rashee Rice, and this week I lose Nico Collins, both to the injured reserve. And the problem is, too, I have 2 IR spots, but it's a dynasty league, so I can't just be getting rid of some of these other guys because I also have Marshawn Lloyd at running back for the Packers on injured reserve, Audric Estime, who I may drop this week, spoiler alert to those in the league, just because he's on injured reserve and hasn't took the field yet. This week I got Kyron Williams on bye too. I mean, we're really in the dumps here because we got C.J. Stroud and Brees Hall. I'm having to start Zach Charbonnet with Kenneth Walker still healthy, so that's a little dicey. Right now I have DJ Moore and Deontay Johnson at the receiver spot, but Deontay Johnson's questionable. If he does not play, we may be in a very bad situation. I started Kate Otten last week, late season addition at tight end, gave me the best performance of anybody. I currently have Justice Hill and Mike Williams in my starting flex spots. That is not where you want to be. I do have Tyrone Tracy currently on the bench. I started him last week, which was a good move, but depending on the health of Singletary, may turn to him. He could give me a huge boost. Otherwise, I just don't have anyone to go to on my bench. I have Zamir White is the only non-quarterback or tight end that is projected over 5 points, or actually over 1 point on my bench. Otherwise, I have Jalen Naylor, who's on bye. I've got TJ Hawkinson also hurt. Theo Johnson, the Giants tight end, I don't think I'm going to start him in a flex. Malachi Corley is the only other healthy option I have, and he hasn't done anything for the Jets yet. So basically, the team is not doing so hot, and I've got to play Andrew this week, who is now, I think, just upped his lineup further. He's projected to win 57% to 43. It's not looking so good for the good guys. Charlie, 4-1 versus Cody, 1-4. This is a big game for Cody's team. If he loses, he's looking at that toilet bowl right in the face. Max is undefeated, as mentioned, going up against Carson, who doesn't look like has set his lineup. Otherwise, Max is going to be 6-0 in this league. Wow. Matthew versus Alex, a little 2-3 versus 1-4 action. That could be interesting. 2-3 Nick versus 3-2 Braden. And then we have the 1-4 Danny versus the 3-2 Zach. Those are some potential shakeups in the standings, depending on what happens here. Because when we look at the standings in the Virginia division, now we have 4 teams tied at 3-2. I had a clear lead, and I have slowly withered away because of the health of my guys. And Cody is down there at 1-4, obviously in the toilet bowl potential here. There are rewards and punishments for at the end of the season. We go to the land of 10,000 lakes. We got a 5-0 team in Max. We got a 4-1 in Charlie, and then it's really wide open after that. So the league has been interesting. I'm also just going to say a very bold strategy occurred this morning. Braden dropped Justin Herbert in a dynasty league for the Chargers defense. That is an interesting move. I'm just going to throw that out there. Someone's going to scoop him up, no doubt about it, if they're keeping an eye on this league. But that'll do it for this week's picks. I appreciate you staying in, tuning along for the entirety of this episode. We'll be back next week with more NFL picks.